Hey there, and welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Today I'm going to be talking about some awards that were just made for RDOF. I'll be right back. Thanks for joining me, Rick Uzzi here at Z-Quorum. So RDOF, which is the Rural Development Opportunity Fund, that was a reverse public auction that took place back in 2020. And throughout 2021, the FCC has been getting in applications, the long-form applications. They've made a few awards here and there, announcements. And then last month, December, they announced a couple of things, so I was going to cover that. By the way, Happy New Year. Here we are, 1st of January. So lots going to be happening this year with broadband funds, federal funding, especially with the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. We'll be hearing more news about that coming up. But I want to talk a little bit about RDOF, since that's something that's ongoing, that's been taking place. And again, there have been some awards there. So let's see what we have here. So first, there was this press release from the FCC. FCC announces over $1 billion in Rural Digital Opportunity Fund support for broadband in 32 states. So again, this is for RDOF. Again, RDOF was a reverse auction that service providers could bid on directly. So unlike the current infrastructure bill, which is just now being was just signed recently, this goes directly to the service providers. And this was a reverse auction, and the funds are coming out of Universal Service Fund. So the little bit of money that you have in your bill, that little junk fee that you've got on your phone bill, is what pays for this. And the FCC did a reverse auction, meaning that the service providers could bid, and then they could bid based on how little, what the least amount of support they would accept in a particular census block group or census block. So they would say, well, I'll take, maybe 25% support from the government. And then they also bid on what speeds, they had what different tiers that they could do. And then the winners of that, the auction took place, the winners of that need to do their long form applications, which were all submitted. And now the FCC has been taking time to go through those, and they've been kind of going through those carefully. Some due diligence. We'll see here some of the things that they're looking for, some of the things that they're throwing out. So they have announced some over $1 billion here in funding, announced today that it's ready to authorize. Now, this is an announcement about ready to authorize. There's a second step of actually authorizing that takes place after that. So ready to authorize $1.041 billion over 10 years in its fifth round of funding for new broadband deployments through the RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And the largest funding wave to date, 69 broadband providers will bring broadband service to 518,000 approximately locations in 32 states. So those locations would be census, that's probably the census blocks that they're talking about there. The Commission also continues to take steps to ensure auction applicants meet financial requirements and that funding is directed to areas that need broadband. So those are two key things, is they want to make sure that the service providers that have signed up and submitted their application are financially able to do this, technically able to do this. So they have to provide their technical plan, they have to provide financials, and they want to make sure that these are areas that that need broadband. Now, the FCC did provide a list of census blocks that were eligible, but later on there was a lot of feedback on, hey, this is a parking lot at an airport, or the various areas that Starlink bid on, the satellite, low Earth orbit satellite bid on, where it's like, in the middle of an urban area and it's not really rural. So there's a lot of due diligence now the FCC is going through on that. The Commission announced a number of defaulted bids, making the census blocks and those defaulted bids potentially eligible for other funding programs. So that's good to get those out of the way, because then people can then bid on that, or cities can, wouldn't be so much bidding now, cities can request grants for that through the infrastructure bill, through ARPA, anything that's available now. They can go ahead and do that if that gets taken off the table there. Over the past year, the Commission has taken a number of actions to strengthen its oversight of the program, including sending letters to 197 applicants concerning areas where there was evidence of existing service or questions of waste. So again, they realized after they got these applications in and they got a lot of feedback, it's like, some of these areas really should not be in here. And they sent letters to these applicants and said, we're going to let you bow out of some of these and not penalize you for that. Normally there'd be a penalty. If you submit an application, you said, yeah, I want to do this, and you get to that point where you submit your application, and there's going to be a penalty if you've won that, if you withdraw it. But they said, well, here's a bunch of places where you can withdraw if you want to. So a lot of people did that. Bidders have already chosen not to pursue support in approximately 5,000 census blocks in response to those letters, those commission's letters. Denying waivers for winning bidders that have not made appropriate efforts to secure state approvals or prosecute their application to basically complete everything. These bidders would have otherwise received approximately $350 million. So in some cases, let's say one of the things that's required is that you be an ETC, or an eligible telecommunications carrier, I believe it is, where you can offer VoIP or voice service in a census block. And if you don't do that in a timely manner, then that would be a default, for example. Publishing a list of areas where providers had defaulted, thereby making those places available for other broadband funding opportunities. As I was saying, that opens this up for other funds down the road. Conducting an exhaustive technical, financial, and legal review of all winning bidders. So that's something that they had to do anyway, is go through and, again, verify their technical capabilities, their financial capabilities, review everything legally. So that was that press release. And then what we have here is the public notice for that. Rural Digital Opportunity Fund support for 7,608 winning bids, and that's not bidders, but that would be bids, I'm assuming, census blocks, census tracts. I'm not sure which level that's counting, but it's not, it could be one bidder has multiple, and you'll see that here in a minute. Ready to be authorized. So this is the ready to be authorized part, where there's kind of a two-step process. The FCC says, hey, this group of people are ready to be authorized, and then a month or so later, probably, I think it is, then they'll send out a notice that some have been authorized. So this is the ready to be authorized part. We've reviewed the long-form applications associated with each of the winning bids identified in Attachment A. These applications were reviewed to determine whether they met all legal, financial, and technical requirements. Based on the representations and certifications in each relevant long-form application, we are prepared to authorize support, subject to submission of the required letters of credit and bankruptcy code opinion letters for each of the winning bids identified. So there's still a few steps that have to take place there. So it's possible some of these people that have said they're ready to be authorized will not be authorized in the next step, depending on how they respond to what's left to do here. And then there's this attachment with, again, you can see here the number of bids. You can see the number of bidders and the number of bids. So here's one bidder. I can't see because something's in my way. Hold on here. It's in my way on my screen anyway. So you got Advantage Cellular Systems, then you got Airlink Rural Broadband, and you can see Airlink Rural Broadband, that goes on for a while. Then you got Armstrong Telecommunications, that goes on for a huge amount of time here. So these are all winning bids, and you can see it shows you the census block group. So that's what each one is, a census block group. It looks like a winning bid, and then you got the number of eligible census blocks in that census block group, and then you've got a number of locations in that group. So this would be the locations here. And you've got the winning bid amount and the amount due in the first year of support, because this is over 10 years. So you can see here $3,102 and then $310.20 in the first year. So it's doled out over 10 years. And there are milestones they need to reach as that money is doled out. So again, you got all these, and then you finally get to the end of Armstrong, and then you got Bascom Municipal, and then you got Belzoni Cable, Cable South, so quite a few on here. And then there's a little easier one to look at. This is showing you a spreadsheet that's just got each particular winner. There we go. Each particular winner. So again, you see some of these same names in here. And this is showing you the state that they're in and the total support over 10 years. So again, it's broken out over 10 years. So up to the top there, you got 3E8 Broadband Solutions, $20 million. You got $35 million for 4-county fiber. So quite a bit of money going out here. And as I scroll down, you can see there's Armstrong, there's Bascom, Belzoni, I mentioned, Cable South Media, Cincinnati Bell, etc. So this is a little bit easier to look at, so you're not looking at every location. Now, some folks that are noticeably missing on here are some of the bigger ones. There's LTD, that was the largest, the one that put in the most applications and won. They didn't really win yet because they haven't been authorized, but they won the most number of bids, and they haven't been notified or anything yet. In fact, there's a question as to whether they will even qualify in any of this because of some things that are going on. And then there's Charter, there's Frontier, there's Starlink, the Elon Musk's low Earth orbit satellite service. And again, they won a lot, but there's a question as to how much, and they're looking for some waivers on certain states because, they've been launching satellites, and in some places they want a little extension on some states because they got to get the satellites up to get the service to be the speeds they need there. So these are, again, that's a little bit easier to look at. So they got that, and then there's a tab down here with census blocks, which again goes through all of the different census block information for each one. You can see this is all just one provider right here that I'm scrolling through. Then we've got another public notice. Now this one says RDOF support authorized for 2008 winning bids. So these are people that I believe were previously in the prior stage, ready to be authorized, and now are authorized. So here it says, based on the representations and certifications in the relevant long-form application, we authorize and obligate support for the winning bidders listed in Attachment A. And then upon issuance, now here it's ready to go. Upon issuance of this public notice, the Universal Service Administration Company, USAC, is authorized and directed to take the necessary steps to disburse from the Universal Service Fund the amounts identified in Attachment A to the long-form applicant associated with each study area specified in Attachment A. So again, from the USF funds, USAC, who manages that, can now start providing money to these folks. And again, we have now, this is a similar list as before, but this is authorized long-form applicants and winning bids. This is dated 12/14. I believe this list that we were looking at, let's see if we can get back to the top here, that says data report 12/16. I believe this includes the people that are authorized and ready to authorize. So the folks that we're looking at on this list that are authorized, I believe, are on here as well. But as we look at this, same kind of thing, got a big long list of folks. This is All Points Northern Neck. Then we got Arkansas Rural Internet Services. We're just in the A's. So I scroll down, there's Bandera Electric. So you got electric co-ops on here, you got phone companies, you got some wireless companies, Castle Cable TV, Cellular Services, LLC. So all kinds of operators are getting access to this money. And again, these are authorized. And then the same thing, you've got a nicer format here. Let me again move something a little bit out of my way here on my screen so I can see this. So again, you've got these folks. And what's interesting about this is it shows the total winning bid amount, number of locations, the winning bidder. And then down here on this tab, we've got the performance. Scrolled way down the bottom here, but hold on. So we've got the performance tiers that they had bid on. So with RDOF, you could bid at a low kind of speed, like the minimum requirement, which I believe was 100 by 20, if I remember. Might have been 25 by 30, I can't remember, but it was the lowest tier that you could bid. And then you could go at a little higher level, and then you could go all the way up to gigabit. And then you also had different latencies that you could bid. So you could be a low Earth orbit satellite that you could bid, and your latency might not be low enough, but you could still bid in the one of the lower tiers for internet as far as speeds go. Or you could be even a geostationary satellite. I suppose you could have bid, but I don't know that you'd get anywhere. I don't think you'd meet the latency even on what was required on the highest latency. So what you'll notice as you go through here is, as you look at this, you see gigabit low. And as I scroll through this, everybody on this list is gigabit low, meaning that they bid, everybody but one right here, that they bid gigabit speeds that they would deploy, that's something that could support gigabit internet and low latency, except for one here. We had Carolina West that came in with a minimum and a low. And what that did for them is if you bid that, your bid was weighted down less. So there were weights. If you were going to do a higher latency or if you're going to do a lower speed, then you had a weight that was added to your bid. And as you were putting your bid in, that that made it harder for you to win. You'd have to beat out somebody. It'd be harder to beat out people that were doing gigabit and low. So you can see here, what they were really trying to do with that weighting system was to get people that would bid gigabit and then low latency. And that's where some of the questions are coming on people that have won, some certain wireless providers or satellite. I don't think satellite was able to bid gigabit, and I don't know if they were able to bid low latency depending on where those were. I can't remember what Starlink did, but there were questions on some providers, especially wireless, for example, where it's like, people are questioning, hey, this is a wireless provider. Somebody like LTD, I believe, was an example where this is a wireless provider, and they're not going to be able to meet what they said they could do. And they've come out and said, well, we're going to be doing wireless just kind of last mile. We're going to be doing a lot of fiber, and it's going to be wireless last mile, and we can meet that. So there's still questions there. That's why you haven't seen, I think, any of those folks awarded anything so far. So I'll go ahead and post a link to this. This is the auction site, and on here you've got final list of eligible areas, updated list of eligible areas, preliminary list of eligible areas. So you got all, basically this is the final list here of the areas, but then you've got lots of recent releases, including this one right here, the authorization public notice and the ready to authorize public notice. So if you want to look through this, I'll post a link to this. But anyway, I thought that would be interesting to talk a little bit about this, because RDOF is going on, even though a lot of people are thinking about what's next with the Broadband Equity and Deployment Act, the part of the infrastructure bill that was just passed. People are thinking about what they're going to be able to do with that. In that case, that money is going to the states, and then the states will then make sub-grantees out of service providers, like the ones that we were seeing right here, instead of going directly to the service providers. But that will be taking place. Probably the funds for that will be released sometime in 2023, probably early on, or at the very earliest, I would think late 2022, because there's a lot that has to take place. The NTIA still has a lot of work that they need to do, and then they're going to send the notice of funding opportunity to the eligible entities, which would be the states, and then the states need to find out who wants to get that money. They're probably already looking into that. So a lot has to take place before those funds are released, but we are seeing money that's going to be a lot of money that's going to be coming out to a lot of these service providers directly with RDOF. So thanks for joining me. If this was helpful or interesting, go ahead and give me a thumbs up on the video. Make sure you subscribe and click the little bell if you want to be notified whenever I am live and or we post a video. And I try to get on here once a day, every day, to talk about either broadband or broadband deployment. Tech Tuesdays, I talk about some other topics sometimes. That'll be tomorrow. But thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.